Let me ask you a question. What would you do if someone just decided to use your garage like it was their own? No request. No permission. Just rolled in, parked, and acted like it was their right. Yeah. That actually happened to me. Now, I live in a neighborhood called Maplewood Heights. Sounds peaceful, right? Well, it used to be, before Deborah moved in. You know the type. HOA board member. Clipboard always in hand. Smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Rules for everyone else, but exceptions for herself. We called her HOA Karen. Not to her face, obviously. But even the mailman knew who we meant. At first, she kept her distance. Wrote a few warning letters about trash bins left out too long or lawns not perfectly edged. Nothing I couldn't live with. But then she got elected as HOA vice president. And that's when things went sideways. Suddenly, she was knocking on doors, peeking over fences, holding impromptu inspections, like she was running some suburban military base. One guy got fined because his garden hose was a trip hazard. Another got written up for having non-neutral outdoor furniture. I wish I were joking. But for the most part, I kept to myself. I followed the rules. Paid my dues. Didn't give Deborah any ammunition. Until the garage incident. It all started on a Thursday morning. I had just returned from a quick grocery run when I noticed something off. My garage door was open. Now I always keep it shut, habit really. But as I pulled into the driveway, there it was, wide open, and parked inside, was Deborah's SUV. At first, I thought maybe she had a delivery and needed temporary space. Or maybe it was a mistake, wrong address or something. But when I walked up to her vehicle, there was a sticky note on the windshield. In bold handwriting it said, "Garage will be used for HOA purposes until further notice. Do not tamper. Deborah, HOA Vice President." I stood there stunned. Like what? My garage. My property. And she was using it like her personal parking spot. I knocked on her door. She lives just across the street, but no one answered. Probably at work, or off enforcing lawn color codes somewhere. I took pictures. The car, the note, the garage door, everything. Then I called the HOA main line. A machine picked up, and the voicemail message? Deborah's voice. Of course. So I sent an email, calmly asking what was going on and requesting that her car be removed immediately. I even quoted the HOA's own bylaws. Article 6, Section 2, no member may occupy, use, or store personal items on another resident's property without written permission. I waited. No response that day. Or the next. By Saturday morning, her car was still in my garage. Still sitting there like it owned the place. Like she owned the place. And then I got a response, not an apology, but a formal notice saying, per HOA Executive Decision 13B, the garage space at 42 Elmwood Lane will be utilized for temporary community storage and staging. This decision is final and non-negotiable. Community storage? Staging? There wasn't a box in the car. Nothing in the garage except her SUV. I checked with other neighbors. None of them had heard of Executive Decision 13B. In fact, most of them had been avoiding Deborah altogether after she fined the Hendersons for hanging wind chimes. That's when I made a decision. Not out of anger. Out of principle. She wanted to turn my garage into a power trip? Fine. Let's see how she liked it when the rules were used against her. That night I locked the garage. Not just with the remote, but with an old-fashioned, heavy-duty manual latch I'd kept from the previous owner. The kind of thing you only use if you're serious about security. Then I unplugged the electric opener, disabled the smart control, and hid the key. Deborah wanted a space? She got one. A very secure one. And then, I did something even bolder. I booked a 10-day vacation. Real quick, a road trip up the coast. Nothing fancy, but just enough to make a point. Before leaving, I posted a picture of my closed garage on the community Facebook group with a caption. Gone for 10 days. Garage is secure. If anyone needs access, too bad. It's private property. I didn't mention Deborah. Didn't have to. Everyone knew. Within hours, I started getting DMs from neighbors. Wait, did she really park in your garage? She did the same thing to the Andersons last year. You're a legend, man. By the next morning, word had spread. Deborah showed up on my doorstep, according to a neighbor, pounding on the door, demanding entry, threatening fines. But I was already 200 miles away, sipping iced coffee by the beach, watching the waves roll in. She left a barrage of voicemails. Everything from legal threats to urgent HOA matters. I didn't respond. I was on vacation. A vacation she inspired. And I was going to enjoy every single day of it. You ever leave town expecting some peace and quiet, and instead your phone blows up with more drama than a soap opera? Yeah, me too. When I say Deborah lost it over my locked garage, I mean completely unhinged. Day 2 of my trip, I'm hiking a trail in Big Sur, real peaceful, nature all around, birds chirping, when I get the first voicemail. This is a violation of community trust. You're obstructing HOA operations. If you do not unlock that garage immediately, I will be forced to take further action. That's Deborah, sounding like a dictator who just realized her army bailed. I didn't respond. I was too busy enjoying the fresh air and my freedom. But that was just the beginning. Apparently, she called the police. No joke. According to my neighbor Walter, who was quickly becoming my favorite source of HOA tea, Deborah showed up at my house with 2 officers in tow, waving her clipboard like it was a warrant. She told them she had executive HOA clearance to use my garage and claimed I was illegally detaining her property. Walter, who was gardening next door, overheard the entire exchange. And bless him, he stepped in. He told the officers, "That's not her property. That's Connor's garage. And she parked there without permission." The cops took one look at Deborah's frantic energy and decided this wasn't a law enforcement issue. It was a civil dispute. Translation: "Lady, this is not our problem." She fumed. Ranted. Said something about calling the HOA legal department, which, spoiler alert, didn't exist. Then she threatened to escalate this to the media. And oh, she did. Day 4 of my vacation, I'm enjoying a fish taco in Santa Barbara when I get tagged on social media. It's a news clip. Local station. Anchor with perfect hair. And there, in the middle of the screen, is my house, and Deborah. She's standing in front of my closed garage like she's reporting from a natural disaster. "This is a clear case of community sabotage," she tells the reporter. "We had a system in place. This resident has obstructed HOA duties and endangered neighborhood harmony." Endangered harmony? My garage? The best part? The headline underneath said, "HOA leader's SUV locked in neighbor's garage, feud erupts in Maplewood Heights." I nearly choked on my taco. The story ran for 2 whole minutes. They even interviewed Mrs. Peterson, the sweet 78-year-old woman across the street who just wanted her gnomes back after Deborah banned them from her lawn. "That woman's been a menace," she said on camera, clutching one of the gnomes like a war medal. "Good for Connor. About time someone stood up to her." The internet agreed. The comments were wild. "HOA Karen got out Karen'd. She stole a garage and is mad she can't get it back? Connor for HOA President 2025. That garage is more secure than Fort Knox." It was the most attention Maplewood Heights had ever gotten, and for once, people were cheering. Except Deborah. She doubled down. She printed flyers. Yep. Flyers. According to Walter, she went door to door with pamphlets accusing me of community sabotage, threatening the HOA order, and, my personal favorite, unneighborly conduct unbecoming of a resident. Unneighborly? Ma'am. You parked in my garage. But Deborah wasn't done. She called an emergency HOA board meeting to have me formally sanctioned. And the reason I know? Because the invite accidentally went to me. Probably forgot I was still on the email list. The agenda literally said, Item number 3, Consequences for Resident Obstructionism, Connor at 42 Elmwood. Resident Obstructionism. I couldn't stop laughing. I forwarded the email to Walter. He showed up at the meeting with popcorn and a t-shirt that read, Team Connor. He said the meeting was a mess. Deborah ranted for 20 minutes while everyone else looked uncomfortable. At one point, someone asked, Wait, you parked in his garage? And she snapped, That's not the point. But that was the point. Everyone knew it. She tried to push for an emergency rule giving the HOA access to any unutilized private space. Someone else said, So, if someone's on vacation, you can just take their backyard too? Dead silence. Her motion failed. Then Walter stood up and said, Maybe we should be talking about her abuse of power. The room turned. She realized it. The grip she'd had on the neighborhood? It was slipping fast. By the time I returned on day 10, relaxed, and still giggling about the news coverage, everything had changed. There was no SUV in my garage anymore. Apparently, sometime around day 8, she called a locksmith to try and get the door open. But since it was manually locked, he told her he'd need my consent. She had to tow her car from the driveway once it was finally moved outside, and word got around fast. Her reputation? Tanked. The board? Called for a re-election. And the neighbors? Well, they greeted me like I was a returning war hero. Mrs. Peterson brought cookies. The couple next door offered to mow my lawn for a month. And Walter? He handed me a mug that said, Garage Boss. And said, Connor, I think you just saved the whole neighborhood. You ever come home from a vacation expecting to catch up on laundry and instead walk into a full-on revolution? Because that's exactly what I walked into. The moment I returned to Maplewood Heights, it was clear the neighborhood had changed, and not in the subtle, maybe someone planted a tree kind of way. I mean full-blown HOA rebellion. Deborah's iron grip on the neighborhood? Gone. Turns out locking her SUV in my garage wasn't just a petty move. It was the catalyst everyone had been waiting for. People had had it with her nonsense. My stand gave them the courage to stop whispering and start organizing. And the first order of business? Removing Deborah from power. The recall started with a handwritten petition. Mrs. Peterson, 78, sweet as pie, known for her potato salad and banned gnomes, went door to door, clipboard in hand. Her pitch? I'm tired of being scared to decorate my own yard. If you're tired of being fined for things like faded pink chips and improperly festive mailboxes, sign here. She got 34 signatures in 2 days. Then came the big guns, Walter, the retired contractor with zero patience for HOA drama and unlimited lawn signs. He printed up a batch that read, Maplewood deserves better. Recall Deborah now. You'd see them stuck in flower beds, taped to windows, hanging from balconies. Even the couple on the corner, the ones who'd been warned for having unauthorized wind chimes, got in on the action. Wind chimes. I mean, who bans wind chimes? Meanwhile, Deborah was spiraling. Every HOA communication she sent got leaked to the neighborhood Facebook group, which had transformed into a digital resistance hub. She tried to post a community update, defending her garage stunt. It backfired. Badly. One neighbor replied. So, just to clarify, you stole someone's private garage, called the police when they locked it, and went on the news crying about it. And now we're the problem? Another said. This ain't a kingdom, Deborah. We all live here. You're not Queen Maplewood. She stopped posting after that. But she wasn't done scheming. 1 week after I got home, Deborah called an urgent emergency HOA board meeting. She insisted she still had the authority to re-establish order. Only problem? Nobody showed up. Except Walter, and 2 new board members elected in a surprise neighborhood vote organized by, you guessed it, Mrs. Peterson and the fence couple. Deborah had been outmaneuvered. When she realized the board had voted to suspend her duties pending further review, she stormed out, but not before threatening to expose the corruption. Corruption? Lady, we're just trying to hang holiday lights without getting fined. And then came the final blow. Someone, and I won't say who, tipped off a local investigative news team. They dug into Deborah's history. Turns out this wasn't her first HOA meltdown. In her previous neighborhood 2 towns over, she'd been removed from her HOA position for, and I quote, creating a hostile living environment, excessive fining, and abuse of discretionary enforcement power. She never mentioned that in her Maplewood Heights campaign flyer. The story aired on a Wednesday night. Neighbors watched it together. Someone even wheeled a TV into the cul-de-sac and handed out popcorn. The news segment showed grainy footage of Deborah at a previous board meeting shouting at a man about his offensively large mailbox. That man, by the way, was a veteran. A decorated veteran. The next day, her credibility? Vaporized. So what happened next? The HOA board did something no one expected. They held an open forum. Instead of closed-door meetings and vague minutes, they invited the whole neighborhood to speak. People shared stories of fines for lawn chairs, security cameras, window tinting, dog breeds, even unsanctioned lemonade stands. One elderly resident tearfully explained how she stopped inviting her grandkids over because Deborah once sent a violation letter for excessive sidewalk chalk art. Sidewalk. Chalk. The new board members took notes. Walter nodded along. And for the first time since I'd moved to Maplewood Heights, people felt heard. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. But it was real. And it was progress. That weekend, something incredible happened. I walked out to my driveway and saw neighbors, talking. Not whispering. Not glancing nervously at their lawns. Talking. Laughing. Sharing lemonade. Mrs. Peterson brought out a tray of gnome-shaped cookies and passed them around like peace offerings. The couple with the fence? They were repainting it together, now in whatever color they wanted. Kids played on the sidewalk with chalk. Nobody stopped them. And Walter? He stood by his mailbox, watching it all, and said to me, "It's amazing what happens when you take one power-tripping bully out of the equation." I nodded. Because he was right. Deborah had ruled through fear, fines, and fake authority. But now, the neighborhood was finally starting to feel like a neighborhood. And as for my garage? Oh, it was still locked. But not to keep people out anymore. You know that feeling when you finally exhale after holding your breath for months? That's what it felt like in Maplewood Heights. Walter had been officially elected interim HOA president, and his very first act? He eliminated every one of Deborah's punitive fines, reversed her ridiculous yard decor bans, and permanently scrapped her compliance patrols. The community garden was reopened. Mrs. Peterson got her gnomes back. And for the first time in a long time, people weren't hiding behind their curtains. They were coming outside, and smiling. And me? I decided we needed to celebrate. I sent out handwritten invitations to every household for a garage reclamation barbecue. Yes, I called it that. The tagline? Come celebrate community resources being used for actual community purposes. I set up grilling stations. Borrowed tables and chairs from neighbors. Even hung a huge banner over my now liberated garage that read, "Garage officially UN stolen." I wasn't sure how many would show up. But at 2 p.m. sharp, they came. 43 people. Nearly the whole block, including families I hadn't even met before. Apparently Deborah had scared off half the social events for months, so this was a much-needed reboot. Mrs. Peterson brought her legendary potato salad. Mr. Davis set up a Bluetooth speaker with classic Motown. And the couple with the rejected fence? They brought cupcakes decorated like tiny garages. Yes. Cupcakes with mini fondant doors and little chocolate SUVs stuck halfway in. Legendary. Around 3 p.m., Walter tapped his spoon against a lemonade pitcher and stood up on my old workbench, the same one Deborah used as her HOA command center when she hijacked my garage. He cleared his throat and addressed the crowd. "We've been through a lot. But today, I want to officially announce some big changes. The backyard went quiet. First, he said, we're eliminating punitive fines for minor violations. No more $200 penalties for slightly crooked parking jobs or mailbox colors that offend someone's aesthetic sensibilities. The crowd cheered. Second, we're introducing a neighbor mediation system. If there's a problem, we talk it out. No more secret fines. No more intimidation. Just conversation. More applause. And third, we're instituting term limits for all HOA board positions. That last one? Standing ovation. Because nothing says, we're done with HOA dictators. Like knowing they can't stay in power forever. Then came the surprise moment nobody expected. Martha Dean, Deborah's closest ally, and longtime rule enforcer, showed up with a plate of brownies and asked to speak. People held their breath. She stepped forward and said, I want to apologize. I supported Deborah, and I spread lies about some of you. I let power and gossip get in the way of being a good neighbor. I was wrong. She went on to announce a new community project she was starting, called Neighbor Kindness, focused on helping elderly residents with groceries, sharing tools, offering support instead of complaints. You could feel the crowd soften. People clapped. Some even hugged her. It was the first time in Maplewood Heights history that someone associated with HOA drama actually took responsibility. And then, just as people were grabbing second helpings of grilled corn and garage cupcakes, a familiar U-Haul truck pulled into the driveway across the street. Deborah. Through the window, we could see her loading boxes and furniture into the truck parked outside her mother's house. She moved stiffly, avoiding eye contact. The entire barbecue paused, forks frozen midair, conversations trailing off, as everyone watched the unofficial final act of the HOA saga unfold in real time. No one waved. No one walked over. And for once, she didn't yell, threaten, or accuse. She just packed. Walter turned to me and said, her mom mentioned something about a tiny apartment 3 states away. Apparently her insurance job didn't survive the news coverage. And then, as if scripted by the universe, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I read it out loud to the group. Thank you for stopping her. I'm Deborah's ex-husband. She did this exact same thing during our marriage. HOA obsessions. Power games. Endless feuds with neighbors. I begged her to get help. Maybe now she finally will. The group fell quiet. It wasn't gloating. It was perspective. This wasn't just about a garage. It was about a pattern, a toxic loop of control, manipulation, and refusal to change. And by standing up to it, maybe, just maybe, we interrupted it. As the sun dipped low and the last burgers sizzled on the grill, I stood in my garage and just looked around. Where Deborah once hung motivational posters about community excellence, there was now a modest sign Walter had nailed up that read, Neighbors helping neighbors. The workbench that used to hold HOA violation forms now had leftover cupcakes and a kid's lemonade stand taped to the side. And then the young couple, the ones who nearly moved away over the fence dispute, approached me. The husband shook my hand. Connor, thank you. We were house hunting just 2 months ago because of Deborah. Now, we're staying. This is finally starting to feel like home. His wife added. You taught us something. You don't have to be anyone's victim, even if they have an official title. And that stuck with me. Walter and I stayed behind after everyone left, stacking chairs and folding tables. He looked around and said, You know, we could turn half this garage into a community workshop. Tool library. Monthly fix-it sessions. Maybe teach the neighborhood kids how to build stuff. I smiled. Because I knew right then, the very garage Deborah tried to steal was about to become something better than it ever was before. And that's exactly what happened. Over the next few weeks, we hosted repair nights, launched a tool-sharing program, even built a mini lending library by the mailbox. The garage went from battleground to community hub. And 6 months later? I got a letter from the Maplewood Heights HOA. Walter had nominated me for the annual Community Service Award, citing my role in restoring neighborhood harmony. The plaque now hangs proudly on the wall, right where Deborah once hung her HOA Authority certificate. Sometimes I think back to that 10-day vacation. Deborah thought she was punishing me. But she actually gave me the perfect opportunity to teach her, and the whole neighborhood, a lesson. About boundaries. About standing up. About what real leadership looks like. She thought her badge made her untouchable. Turns out, smart planning beats loud arguing every time. And communities? They thrive when people feel heard, not hunted. So if you've ever felt bullied by someone hiding behind a title or a clipboard, remember this. You don't have to be anyone's victim. Not in your neighborhood. Not in your home. And definitely not in your garage. If you've got an HOA Reddit story of your own, drop it in the comments. We read every single one. And trust me, the next story we've got? Even wilder. Thanks for watching Voice of Tales, where the absurd, the unbelievable, and the oddly satisfying all collide. See you in the next video.